Today we're going to talk about expressions of time and place. That is, how do we talk in Latin about when something is occurring and where it's occurring. So in English, when we want to tell when something happens, we tend to use prepositions and so prepositional phrases. So for example, you can see I've created some examples here. I'll see you at 1 o'clock. So if we're talking about a specific time, we say at, or I'll see you on Tuesday, not at Tuesday. Or I might say, I'll see you within 5 days or within the week or something like that. And then sometimes I'll say, I'll see you for 5 days. That is, I'll be in Philadelphia next week and I'll be able to see you for the extent of 5 days. So these are 4 different prepositions that we use for time expressions, and they all then talk about time in a slightly different way. Some of them are a particular moment in time, right? At 1 o'clock or on Tuesday signifies that that is the particular time. Whereas within gives us a sense of range, right? And then something like 4 or 5 days gives us duration. So these are 3 different ways that we conceptualize time: a moment in time, within a span of time, and an extent or duration of time. And for the Romans, they also talk about time in these same ways, but instead of using prepositions, they do something slightly different. For the Romans, they use either the accusative case or the ablative case, and they use it with no preposition. So you just have an accusative phrase or an ablative phrase, and that tells you whether we're talking about a moment in time, a space of time within which something is happening, or an extent or duration of time. For time when, that is the moment in time, I'll see you at 1 o'clock, I'll see you on Tuesday, we just use the ablative. So I would say something like prima hora te videbo, where prima hora in the ablative gives us that moment in time. Or I might say die martis te videbo. Again, a single moment in time, where die is in the ablative. You might say, wow, how am I going to be able to tell when I have an expression of time if I have no preposition? But of course, expressions of time are always using time words. Words like hora or die. And so it is usually pretty clear that we are talking about an expression of time because we have some kind of time word, and we might have a number or something like that, or a day of the week. It is usually pretty straightforward. Likewise, if we're talking about time within which, we are also going to use the ablative. You might think that this would be confusing, that we would confuse it with time when, but we really can't. And I'll show you an example. I'll see you within 5 days. Quinque diebus te videbo. So you could say, if you try to do it as a time when, I will see you on 5 days, it doesn't really make any sense. The ablative of time when is much more common than the time within which. But if time when doesn't work, then it has to be time within which, and so it is super, super clear. If it's not on 5 days, it's going to have to be within 5 days. And luckily, if we're talking about an extent of time or a duration of time, we're going to use the accusative. So if I say, I'm going to see you for 5 days, that's quinque dies, not diebus, te videbo. So that is it. We're going to use words that have express units of time. We're going to have them either in the ablative or in the accusative, and that's going to tell us whether we're talking about a moment in time, a span of time, or a length of time. In this chapter, we also learned some words to help us express other kinds of relationships to time. Concepts like earlier, later, and ago. Some of these words may be familiar to you. We've sort of seen them already, but maybe not thought about them exactly in this way as thinking of them as time words. So, of course, the preposition post means after, and post takes the accusative. And so you can see here, post quinque annos or quinque post annis means 5 years later. So it can take either the accusative or the ablative, depending. There's really no difference, but we're going to, in either case, translate it as, maybe less commonly after 5 years, 5 years later. But you can see that that's really what it would mean. Ante works exactly the same way. So you can see we can have it here with the accusative, or we can have it here with the ablative, and it is going to mean ante quinque annos, quinque ante annis means 5 years earlier, 5 years before. So if you want to translate it before or after, or later or earlier, I think that for the most part it's going to make sense. But keep in mind that later, earlier is an available translation to you as well. This is the one, I think the final one is the one that maybe is a little stranger, abhink, which means ago. Literally, abhink is ab, which means from, and hink means here. So it would be from here, from this point in time, and so ago. And just like the other ones, we can have annos here in the accusative, or we can have annis here in the ablative, abhink quinque annos, or abhink quinque annis, 5 years ago. You could say abhink multos annos, many years ago. But abhink is probably best translated like this. In addition to using the ablative and accusative to express time, we use them in very similar ways to express place. We know that prepositions like ad or in, when it means into, take the accusative, and the accusative in those cases shows motion toward something. So I'm coming to the town, ad oppidum venio, right? I'm coming right up to it, so you're moving toward the town. But if you're moving away from something, you use the ablative. So for example here, I'm coming from the town, ab oppido venio, because ab takes the ablative. And if we're just going to be staying right in place, we use the ablative for that too. So in plus the accusative means into, but in plus the ablative means you're just standing in a particular place. In oppido sum, I am in the town. So in general, motion toward is shown by a preposition plus the accusative, and motion away from a place is shown by a preposition plus the ablative, and something that is not moving at all is a preposition plus the ablative. So ablative is used for motion away from and staying in one place, and moving toward something, we use the accusative. There are, however, certain nouns that just don't use a preposition, but still are going to use those cases to convey that idea. Where if you're moving toward that thing, you're going to use the accusative, but if you're moving from that thing, you're going to use the ablative, and if you are staying right in place, fixed in a single location, you're going to use a new case which we call the locative, the location case. We don't learn the locative when we learn our other cases because very few words actually use a locative. It has to be an actual place, and there are only a handful of words that really use it. For the most part, we see the locative with names of towns and cities or countries or something like that. So I'll show you in just a minute. But we're not really learning truly new endings for the locative because in the first and second declension, in the singular, it is exactly the same as the genitive. So for the first, it's going to be I, and for the second, it's going to be E, so it's going to look the same in the singular. And for all other declensions, that is for the third, the fourth, the fifth, and for first and second plural, it's the same as the ablative. So for these two, right, in the plural, it's going to be is. And we can also see in the third, for example, it would be e and ibus, etc. Okay, so usually the locative looks like the ablative, except here. So which nouns work like this? Well, we have, luckily, a handy little mnemonic device to help us remember which words use a locative instead of using a preposition. So D stands for domus, which means home, and so to say at home, we say domi. Any islands smaller than the island of Rhodes, which is sort of a medium-sized island, so really small island. Sicily is bigger than Rhodes. We're just going to use a preposition with Sicily, but small islands would use the locative. The word Rus, which means countryside, we're going to say Ruri if we want to say in the countryside. Towns and cities also use a locative. So if we are in Rome, we just say Romai. We don't have to say in Roma. We just say Romai. And dirt altogether spells dirt, and that is humus, ground. And so if you are on the ground, it is humi. So for all of these words, they take a locative if you want to say where they are, and if you want to say that you are coming from home, you would just say domo. You don't need to have to say abdomo. And if you were going to home, you would say domum in the accusative, and you do not have to say ad domum. You would just say domum without the preposition. And that is true for all of these words, no prepositions, just accusative to show motion toward, ablative to show motion away from, locative forms to show that that's where you are right now. So here are some examples. So ad oppidum venio, I come to the town, but Romam venio, I come to Rome, no ad. Ab oppido venio, I come from the town, but Londinio venio, I come from London, ablative. Or in oppido sum, I am in the town, but Romae sum, I am in Rome. So to sum up, we have expressions of time and expressions of place where we don't use prepositions. For expressions of time, we use the ablative to show a moment in time. We also use the ablative to show space within which. And we use the accusative to show a length of time, 4 or 5 days. With expressions of place, we do something similar. For that stationary thing, we use the locative to show where we are. But we use the ablative to show from, and we use the accusative without a preposition to show motion to. So that's it. These all tend to be pretty easy. The place ones only work that way in those with our dirt words. Those are the only ones that will work this way. And our time words are always going to have some kind of time word in the expression. Annus, year, dies, day, nox, night, something that can tell us some amount of time. So that's it. Send me your questions.